We are all aware of how intriguing death is to all people, but do you know which deity represents death and resurrection in the underworld? It is certainly none other than Osiris, the Egyptian lord of the underworld. And this leads us to dive deep into his story. So in today's video, we'll take you through the journey of how Osiris became the god he is and his story. The term Osiris is derived from the ancient word Asir or Wasir, which basically means someone who rules on a throne and is very strong. It is said that there are 9 main gods in ancient Egypt. Osiris is considered the eldest son of Geb and Nut, the brother-husband of Isis, and the father of another prominent Egyptian deity, Horus. The earliest traces of Osiris worshipped were discovered in the middle of Egypt's 5th dynasty. As the dynasty period went on, Osiris gained significance, and by the 1st millennium BCE, he was one of the most commonly worshipped gods. The most significant and well-known tale in ancient Egyptian mythology is the Osiris myth, and it goes as thus. Osiris and his sister wife Isis were in charge of the world immediately after it had been created. They discovered that the majority of Egyptians were uncivilized and in need of leadership and guidance when they started controlling the world. So the duo started educating the Egyptian population about law, agriculture, and religion as a way to aid them. According to the Osiris myth, Set was jealous of his brother's success and was envious of it. Their relationship further worsened after Set's wife, Nephthys, tricked Osiris into thinking she was Isis and seduced him, resulting in the pregnancy of the god Anubis. Set then planned a lavish celebration where he presented a box and told the guest that whoever fits in it the best would receive it as a gift. He had a beautiful coffin made to Osiris's precise measurements. After Osiris was placed into the coffin, Set slammed the lid shut, locked it, and threw it into the Nile, where the flood took it downstream. Then it became impaled in a tamarisk tree, where it remained for so long that the tree grew around the coffin and encased Osiris's body. It was by chance that Malcander, the king of Byblos, and his wife, Astarte, discovered the tree since it was close to their home. The tree's lovely structure and alluring aroma attracted their admiration. Malcander thus gave the order to chop the tree down so that it could be transported to his castle and turned into a decorative pillar for his court. Isis, who had left Egypt in the meantime to search for her husband, eventually made her way to Byblos while presuming the identity of an elderly woman. She cried for her missing husband as she knelt by the lake there. After making friends with the king and queen there, she was asked to be the nursemaid for their infant children. She was welcomed into the palace by the royal handmaidens who had traveled to the sea to take baths. When Queen Astarte learned that Isis had attempted to render the young child eternal by bathing him in fire, she was horrified. Isis then showed herself to be a goddess, and the king and queen made her vow that she could have everything she desired in exchange for sparing them. She merely asked for the pillar, which they gave her right away. Isis cut Osiris from the tree after leaving the court and brought his body back to Egypt, where she concealed him from Set in the Nile Delta's marshy area. She left the body in the care of her sister Nephthys, while she went to gather herbs to concoct a potion that would bring him back to life. In the meantime, Set learned about his brother's return. He went in search of his body but was able to persuade Nephthys to reveal its location. And after he had located it, he cut it into pieces and spread it across the surrounding area and into the Nile. When Isis returned, she was in utter shock, but she was quick to gain composure before starting the search of her husband's missing pieces. She was able to retrieve every part of the body with the aid of Nephthys, with the exception of the penis, which had been dropped into the Nile and devoured by the Oxyrhynchus fish, which is why this fish was forbidden in ancient Egypt. Isis revived Osiris but soon realized that they can't have a child. As a result, she transformed herself into a kite called Osiris and absorbed her seed into her, thus conceiving a son, Horus, to whom she subsequently gave birth in the Nile River's delta. However, Osiris was now incomplete and unable to serve as the Lord of the Living, since one of his bodily parts were missing. Osiris therefore entered the Afterlife, where he assumed the roles of Lord of the Underworld, the Afterlife, and the Judge of Death. Osiris was therefore revered in ancient Egypt as the ruler of the underworld and the deity of the afterlife and regeneration. Some individuals still revere Osiris as the god of death because they think doing so would provide them salvation once they pass away. The Osiris myth concludes with Set being defeated by Horus, son of Osiris and Isis, in a duel, and Horus assuming his proper throne as king of the living. Osiris was regarded as Egypt's first ruler by the ancient Egyptians. He was credited with establishing the cultural norms that all succeeding monarchs were bound to uphold. Egypt allegedly descended into anarchy when Set killed Osiris, and order wasn't restored until Horus defeated Set. Pharaohs in Egypt were viewed as incarnations of Horus in life and Osiris in death. They were mummified to look like Osiris once they passed away. By tricking them into believing the mummified pharaohs were Osiris himself, this served to both remind people of God and ward off evil spirits. Additionally, symbols and pictures were painted on the tomb walls of the pharaohs to instruct the departed spirit on what to do next after passing into the afterlife. Due to his connection to agricultural fertility, Osiris was also revered in ancient Egypt as the god of fertility. It was thought that Osiris and his wife Isis passed on the knowledge of agriculture to the people at the dawn of time. Along with this, Osiris's rebirth and resurrection also gave support to the idea that he was the fertility god. His son Horus's conception was viewed as an emblem of fertility. Additionally, the Nile River was revered as the river of fertility since it was where Osiris's coffin was thrown and where a fish ate his penis. Ancient Egypt was home to several locations where Osiris was honored yearly. These rituals were fertility rites that represented Osiris's resurrected state. The Osiris Garden, an Osiris-shaped mold filled with soil, played a major role in these rituals in the later eras of ancient Egypt. After that, grain was seeded in the mold, which had been moistened with Nile River. Later, the grain that germinated served as a representation of Osiris, who had reincarnated himself. For his appearance, Osiris is frequently shown with either black skin, which alludes to the fertility of the Nile Delta, or green skin, which represents rebirth. He can be seen wearing the Atef crown, which resembles the white crown of Upper Egypt and has 2 ostrich feathers on each side, in his most developed form. Osiris is frequently depicted with a flail, an agricultural implement used to separate grains from their husks, and the crook, the shepherd's stick with a hooked end. The flail depicted him as the fertility god, while the crook signified the might of his dominion. You might now be thinking that the story of Osiris is no less than a movie plot, and that's rightly so. He sure had a time of his life. Don't forget to tell us in the comment box about what do you think of the love between Isis and Osiris, in addition to literally bringing him back from the dead, led to his emergence as the god of the dead. That's the power of love, right? Also, if you enjoyed watching this video, smash the like and subscribe button so you don't miss out on our future uploads. We'll see you next time. Until then, stay mythically mad.